Hey there, Bubble Dreamer. Just passing through. Hello everybody and welcome back to Rayman Origins. Let's try and find a suitable character for today's update. This little guy is the Ninja Teensy. And from the sound of things, he's not that great of a ninja either. You know, I'm pretty sure there's someone more suitable for the job. Say, we haven't used a female Teensy. Yeah, let's go for that. Blazing through the desert, bubbling baddies, huh? Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner. Yeah, I don't think we need to look any further than this. I think she can handle this. So let's take her to the desert, bobblize some of those baddies some more. Before the time trials, though, it's always treasure time. Why does the bubble have to be in the way of the level name? I never understood that. Tuned Up Treasure happens to be one of my favorite treasure maps in the entire game. It's a definite step up from playing in the shade from the previous chapter and makes Cacophonic Chase from the Desert of Didgeridoos pale in comparison. It's not overly difficult, but it has a lot of engaging stuff going for it. It makes plenty of use of the level elements, and I also like the fact that treasure can take shortcuts where it forces you to go around. As usual, it's the little things that stand out. It also makes us use quite a few power-ups we have, like wall running in this instance. Sure, the tricky treasure temple in the mystical peak did that too, but you can't really overuse this gimmick. I also really like the illusion of moving upwards. Well, that was close. And right towards the end, we get to use our change size power-up. It's sort of unnecessary, sure. If the devs wanted, they could have made the lower area accessible for a big character just as well. So basically, it's just a small visual detail and completely unnecessary from a gameplay point of view. But still, it adds to the charm of the level, I think. So that brings us to the time trials, and let me tell you, the first two jumps in Savage Swarms took me a lot of time. You can get past these first swarms without hitting any of the gongs, but it appears that the position of the flies is random and each and every one of them has a chance to kill you. So it really isn't a viable speedrunning option, but it does save you a whole lot of time. And it looks pretty neat too, don't you think? Thankfully, the rest of the level isn't quite as unforgiving and doesn't rely on luck as much. It's mostly just hitting the necessary gongs, preferably the ones that give you your own portable light, or whatever that is, if it's sound, if it's light, I'm not really even sure anymore. But as you can see, it helps us breeze through most of the segments without having to rely on these static ones. Oh, stupid me getting stuck like that. The last screen, as you may remember, was a gauntlet where you had to get to the next gong before the previous one runs out, but as you may imagine, you're not required to hit nearly all of them. If it weren't for my small mistake back there, you could probably get to the end with just one of them actually. 104. Not quite the sub 1 minute time I was going for, but after a couple of hours of playing just one level, I think I'll just cut my losses and move on. Alright, that brings us to Tricky Winds, not my favorite level of the grottos, and that goes double for the time trials. The reason is quite simply the fact it slows you down a lot. The first screen is nice enough to have these drums, so we can skip most of it without entering the windpipes. But from this point onwards, it's primarily just this. Not sure if that saves time, actually. but at least it brings some variety into the gameplay here. And variety is what you want when the majority of the level consists of hovering. And some questionable choices. I really don't know if that was fast or not. I kinda doubt it. I'm sure that just cost me some time. Which is a real shame, because this is such a quick level. Coming up on the next screen we have some ground, which we definitely can use for some boost, but before you know it the wind will kill your speed. Can't hit the ground because of the stream. Can't even clear these tentacles fast because the bottom one fluctuates and it always hit me when I tried dashing to the right. Well, speak of the devil, that is one inconveniently placed tentacle right there. Pretty sure I mentioned this in the first video, but you can squeeze past there. Saves you a little bit of time, because you don't have to go and press the button. Now I try jumping off walls every now and again. I'm not sure if it's faster, I'm pretty sure it isn't, because there's a slight cooldown before you can start hovering again. I didn't really test all this stuff out. Ground stomping towards the end there might have been slightly faster. Might have even saved me half a second. Whoop-de-doo! I don't mean to sound like this is the worst level in the world. It isn't. It's just that with a few tweaks here and there, it could have been a genuinely interesting level to speedrun. Thankfully after that disaster of a level we come to high voltage. Starts off with a nice slope right here. So it's immediately more interesting than Tricky Winds is on the whole. It's important to keep moving fast because most of these sparks and whatnot are in a cycle. You don't want to miss your chance to slip past them as quickly as possible. Pretty obvious mistake here. I forgot the rightmost platform doesn't go as low as the left one, so it would have been faster to jump onto it from the rightmost wall. Well, that's no fun. Got suspended in midair. I was probably too close to the ceiling, so it prevented me from doing a full-on dash. Kind of annoying, to be honest. This last screen is really neat. There's a ton of obstacles, as you may remember, but if you map out your route accordingly, you can go through it really fast. Unless you accidentally attack in midair instead of waiting to land and doing a proper dash. I wasn't really prepared for that, so I didn't have a backup strategy. I wanted to play it safe. But we got the medal. That's good enough for me. Now, I remember complaining a whole lot about Skyward Sonata because it wasn't a very interesting level to speedrun. You had to wait around for the snake a whole lot. Thankfully, Snake Eyes does it a lot better. Right from the first screen, you can dash over to the right. That didn't go smoothly as I'd planned, but still you can see we can get over to the door without the snake. And continuing on that note, we can disregard the first snake entirely, and we want to do that. We want to get to the edge of these clouds as quickly as possible, as it triggers these two guys, and after a while we can ditch them too. Well, it was a bit sloppy, but you get the idea. And then it brings us to the vertical room. Not a whole lot of tricks you can do here, just try and not get tangled onto the snakes. The bouncy birds you can actually use to skip some of the wall jumping. Well, that was a pretty clear mistake. We didn't have to wait around for the snake there. I'll show how to do it properly at the end of the video. Up until now, everything's pretty much worked in our favor. A couple of mistakes notwithstanding, we've been able to get to the next screen without waiting around for our ride. Unfortunately, the last screen drops the ball. It forces us to wait in situations like that. So from this point onwards, no matter how fast you go, how far you can jump, you can never really outrun the level design, so to speak. I tried quite a few tricks, but none of them really seem to work at all. So I'm desperately trying to get on top of this pillar so I could jump to the right before the snake goes there, but it's a no-go. Not to mention there is that one red bird in the way. And hovering all the way to the right seems like a pretty tricky thing to do. It might be possible by some means of damage boosting, but I never managed to do it myself, so I really couldn't say. Even if the last screen on Snake Eyes is something of a lackluster, it's still a rather interesting level. It's a good level to speedrun, and definitely a step up from Skyward Sonata, although that's not saying much. So there you go, Grumbling Grottos is in the bag. Next up is Luscious Lakes. Well, I'll see you next time, but before that, let's take a look at a couple of those things I mentioned before. We'll start with the first screen, as in the actual run it was rather sloppy. If you can get the first jump just right, and this last bit, if you can do it in just a couple of jumps, it saves you a lot of seconds. You can actually do it in under 13, which is not too bad. But no one in this day and age has time to master all sorts of stuff like that, so you could just let the snake go ahead, trigger the watch a little bit later, and just do it the easy way. Of course, it's not gonna be a big help for, say, an entire speedrun of the whole game, but if you just want to brag to your friends with an individual Snake Eyes time, it's good to know there's an easy and cheap way to do it. This is where I made the biggest mistake in the actual run. If I just jumped on this bouncy bird, I could have floated all the way to the end without the snake. But there is an even faster way of doing it, if you just jump off the first bird. And damage boost off this guy. The last thing I did was try to get to the goal post without the snake. Found out that getting on top of this pillar was way faster. However, all of my attempts, all 4 of them or so, ended in failure before I got bored, so I'll just leave you with these and some Savage Worms action. And I'll see you at Luscious Lakes next time.